Hello and welcome to the Go There Do That podcast. My name is Ethan, and today this is a very special, not another travel-related podcast, but I'm here with Logan.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about some stuff. So we are doing this podcast outside, so you may hear some audio.
There's dogs, chickens, children,
all of it.
airplanes.
So be here with us and listen to the things with us as we talk. So now, you, as a human being, as a person,
Yes.
there's this little thing you started called the Rehumanist.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't totally know yet. If anything, I guess what I would define it as it's a name. So it's, a name kind of contains it's kind of a vehicle for expressing similar thoughts and ideas and creating things around those thoughts and ideas. And so I wouldn't necessarily call it a brand. I'm not selling any products. It sounds cringy to call it a movement, but really it's the name of my newsletter and my podcast and my Instagram handle, I guess. But yeah, I guess really what it is, it's the synthesis of a lot of different kind of trails of thought and things in my own life that have all kind of come together. And really I was just looking for a way to kind of be able to package everything I'm thinking and wanting to create under kind of this one umbrella where they all kind of feed into each other, you know what I mean? So
A summary of your creativity, in a way, and your thoughts about the future. And
I mean, I think a big part of it too is just having moved out to the country and living. Oh, there's a spider.
Exactly.
Having moved out to the country and just the way that kind of changes a lot of your perspective and just your rhythms of life and things like that. And then, it just kind of brings up a lot of things that you think about. So
when you say rhythms of life, are you talking about more like a yearly seasonal cycle that we have grown less accustomed to adjusting to outdoors due to technological advances or something like that?
I mean, I think rhythms in two ways. Rhythms of life as far as, just the things that you do as habits that build you into the person that you are. But also, yes, like the physical seasons. So you're growing up in West Texas, you kind of have some seasons, but not really. But here in Eastern Kansas, you have 4 very distinct seasons. And I didn't realize how much that would affect just my psychological state of, you really just, especially when you're out in the country in a place with 4 seasons, your day-to-day life just shifts so drastically. Because like in the spring and the fall, when the weather's nice, we're outside for 8 hours a day on the weekends, just all the time. Because it's great. But then when it's -10 in the winter, you're inside for weeks at a time. And so you really do have these rhythms of in the winter is a time where just like the trees kind of go dormant and all the mammals and the insects, they all stay dormant. You kind of do too. It's a time where you're really kind of forced to, again, be inside and reflect and pause and be still and think and contemplate, and then in the spring and the summer when things are alive and green and all the sounds and the crickets and everything, you're also out doing lots of things too. So you really do kind of feel yourself kind of sync up with nature in that way, just as a part of being out in the wild, I suppose. Yeah.
And so does that create issues if you move away from that? How do you describe that, away from it? I don't think it's like a sudden thing, right? When you've moved away from the rhythms.
I mean, I guess I haven't moved away. I mean, I've been here the whole time, but I would imagine there'd be some disconnect, I think. I don't know.
So you're saying this rhythm happened after you moved here?
Oh, yeah, I totally didn't have that.
You previously can compare, though, to a time when that didn't exist because you were in the north end of a desert in West Texas.
Right. It is weird that there is that physical, again, because I feel like that's something that you can't really cultivate unless you are in a place with seasons. But I'm sure there's other ways to thrive and to connect with nature and the rhythms of the seasons in other places that don't have the distinct seasons. But I think part of it too was just I moved up here in a season of life too, where I was being more mindful of my body and the physical world and reality and where I fit into the context of the human story and stuff. So I'm sure that has some of it to do with it too.
So when you are out with nature, what do you think that does for you personally?
Sure. Like on a physiological level, I didn't bring any sources with me, but there's been studies that show that when you get around trees, just like the presence of trees, like lowers your heart rate and lowers anxiety and things like that. Like biologically speaking, we are designed to be around trees, which is really weird to think about. I'm sure it's like an evolutionary thing. Same thing with sound of birds. It's like listening. There's studies that show like listening, hearing the sounds of birds, even if it's a recording, lowers your heart rate and helps with anxiety and things like that. Big part of that probably again has like an evolution to do with an evolutionary thing where when you hear birds, that there's no predators around. So it's probably like your instinctual brain is like, oh, this place is safe, So on one level, there's just the base physiological thing like that. But I think for me too, Wendell Berry talks a lot about what he feels and thinks when he walks into the woods, and a big part of it is just it reminds you of your finitude and of kind of again your place in the human story. He has a phrase where he talks about this little hill that's on his property. Every time he looks at it, he realizes that hill has had more owners than its owners have had years, is what he says. And so this understanding that this land, these trees, this ecosystem was here a long time before you were, and will be here a long time after you're gone. And so in that context, you're not really like the owner of the land, right? You're more of a tenant, and nature is the owner, and you're just here almost as a guest. And so that really kind of centers you in my opinion, kind of a different context than I feel like most people have in the Western world, which is, you go out and make a name for yourself, and you're going to achieve your destiny and shape the world into the way you want it to be. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that answers your question. But.
That was really good.
Cool.
Yeah. It's something that we can't really explain. We can definitely feel it though.
Yeah.
It's there. It's just hard to prove because you can't say, here's the quick fix. Well, look at that tree. You're going to be better now. And It's hard to actually say, well, I looked at this tree and I don't feel any better now.
Right.
So why not?
I think it's something you have to cultivate. It's something that you have to be intentional about. And so for me, like living out here, I feel like it's almost like a muscle you have to work out. And so the more that you get out in nature and the more you can kind of connect with outdoor spaces, the easier it becomes to do that. And like the faster you can do that,
Yeah.
Whereas if you're somebody who doesn't do it very often, you kind of have to ease into it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I think in modern society, there's kind of this bifurcation of like nature's out there. We're not nature, so we have our cities and our air conditioning and everything, which is great. And then when we want to, we can go enter into nature and then come back out of it. But the reality is like humans are nature. We're organic beings. We're part of nature. We are nature. So you're not really going to connect with this other thing that exists beyond your own experience. Like what you're doing is you're reconnecting with what you are, which is nature.
We'll pause. Have a Charlie pause.
Hi, Charlie.
All right.
he might just be there for a while.
That's good. Say you're speaking to somebody who lives in an apartment complex in the middle of a concrete jungle somewhere, and they're longing for something more, right?
Yeah.
They don't want this. It's something not natural about this everyday,
Sure.
never stopping to think and reflect. They don't never have a winter because they have a heater. They never have a summer because they have AC.
Yeah.
And so how would you encourage somebody to help bring that rhythm into a life where it's like, well, realistically, we live where we live.
Sure.
And we have to. So how do you cope with that sort of thing? What are some methods some words that you could bring in?
I mean, on a practical level, that's a big reason why I don't make a bunch of homestead content. We were talking about this earlier off podcast, but I don't make a lot of content about here's how to start a homestead and stuff because it's just not practical for a lot of people. It's not helpful advice for most people. Most people live in cities, and we need people to live in cities, and we need the experience of living in cities to be good. So that's why I actually think a big way to solve that problem that you're talking about is by building better cities. Building cities that people want to live in, that have good green spaces, that have places where kids can play in the street, where you can walk to work, you can ride your bike to the grocery store. I feel like that's a big part of it. So back when I did live in the suburbs, when we lived back in Texas, I started riding. I had an e-bike, and I started riding that, and I found that replacing my car with an e-bike definitely centered me in my environment so much more because if you think about like the experience of the average American office worker, you're in your house, and then you get in your car in your garage, and then you drive to your office. Maybe you get outside to walk from your car into your cubicle, and then you're in your cubicle all day, and then you do the reverse on your way home. Maybe you go by a drive-through. So you're basically just moving from one indoor individual space to another. You're never actually living in your city. You're never actually interacting with anyone. So doing something as simple as being able to ride a bike to work does is suddenly you're outside, you're smelling the restaurants, you're smelling the trees, sometimes you're smelling a dumpster, it's the good and the bad. You're seeing your neighbors. You're a lot more likely to, if you see somebody outside who's watering their lawn, crossing a street, checking their mail, you're going to say hi. Maybe you even strike up a conversation. You're feeling the weather, and you're just a lot more aware of the physical space that you're living in. So that's kind of a weird situation, but that is one thing I suggest is, find a way to live close to where you work, which again, not everyone can do. The thing is though is like a lot of people talk about, when it comes to politics, it's always about like the presidential election. That's kind of what we think of, but so much of what affects our day-to-day lives is more local politics, which is way more, you can do way more to influence. You can run for city council, you can be on different boards and stuff like that. You can join your chamber of commerce, and there's things you can do locally to change how your cities function and what happens in them, that you don't need you don't need to have like this presidential election for. You can do it, and you as an individual person have more agency to change those things.
You just have to get your priorities straight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You have to care enough and have enough, and you have to have enough margin in your life. Like that, the reality is a lot of people, they've got kids, they've got multiple jobs, they've got, just lots of things they're dealing with, parents they got to help. So, not everyone's in a phase of life to be able to do that. But.
Well, so if you're taking care of your family,
yeah,
that's a fulfilling thing to do. Like that's a perfectly normal, if I'm taking care, if that's the meaning I need in my life,
yeah.
I guess I'm speaking more to the people who have that longing, right? That missing link in their life. Because I've met several people whose fulfillment is totally fine with a homebody, stay at home.
Yeah.
I'm providing, I'm doing this
People
thing.
don't have to go out and have adventures, totally.
But it's more like a lot of today, we're being taught how to make a living, but not exactly how to make a life. We're saying this is what I need to do because I've been told to do this, but it's not actually coming from somewhere that I've invented myself. And you...
Oh, Charlie. Sorry.
Charlie Paws.
What are you doing?
He's just hanging out.
I could go put him inside of him too.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
We sort of forget about certain parts of ourselves,
Sure.
I think, and that's a big problem, is we're maybe doing more of these things, trying to conform, trying to be a part of this collective unit because I don't necessarily enjoy who I am as an individual, and that might be a perspective some people take, right?
Sure.
And you have, I think, such a profound view on life, being a part of this world now that you grew up with and you have all these memories of yourself in your childhood. That is, I think, one of the most important things to have, is knowing yourself all the way through, right?
Yeah.
And I know it's like one of the most difficult things you could ever do, though, is knowing who you are.
Sure.
But also a unfed mind devours itself. And so you have to really think on stuff and learn. And so what are some valuable things that you've read or seen? It wasn't just coming here, right?
Yeah.
It was all the other knowledge and experiences that you've attained over the years. What's the best piece of advice you've ever heard? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Oh, the best piece of advice I've ever heard. Oh, snap. I feel like, I don't know if this is the best piece of advice, but one kind of anecdote I try to live my life by is, I want to say it was Chesterton, maybe it was Spurgeon. One of those old preacher guys has a phrase. He says, there's two ways to get enough. One is by acquiring more and more, and the other is by desiring less. And realizing that I spent a lot of my 20s very, not unhappy, but like unsatisfied. And so much of it came from that I put so many qualifiers on my contentment, on like, I'll be happy once A, B, and C happens. And so many, but also like so many of those things I put qualifiers on were stuff that would have been out of my control anyway. So basically I'm leaving my sense of contentedness and my deep gratitude for life in the hands of fate, essentially, you know. So for me, it's about cultivating an understanding of I guess shifting my expectations, just like getting to be alive itself is enough of a gift that whatever that looks like, I'm thankful for. I mean, I guess up to a certain extent, you know, there's obviously some people who experience great suffering, and, you know, I don't want to diminish that, but, so yeah, I guess my advice is, again, for me, like, don't have this idealized version of your life somewhere out in the future that like, once I get to there, I'll be happy, you know? I think a lot of people spend a lot of their lives like that, and then they don't figure out that that's not the way to do it until they've lived a lot of their lives, and then you have all this regret because like, I could have been happy for all these decades, even though these things didn't happen.
The later the lesson is learned, the greater the wisdom you receive.
Ah. Yeah. I guess that's another thing is like, I really try to also pay attention to people who are a lot older, who have like learned things late and regret them. I'm like, okay, if I can just learn that now, maybe I'll have less regret. So
it comes into being curious about like, how do I get rid of this? What'd you call it? You had a little tension, a little frustration with
like
you
just
know,
like unsatisfaction.
Yeah. And that's can be a driving force into seeking the thing.
Sure.
Because that's not desiring less. That's how do I start to desire less stuff?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Like and if we think like attachment is the thing that creates conflict, if we attach ourselves to the future, we attach ourselves to an event in the past. It just started raining. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's difficult to be present
Totally.
if you're ahead or behind in something.
And to be honest, I think a big part of it too, a big part of my inner struggle when I was younger too, was honestly was a sense of entitlement. You know, it was this feeling of like, I deserve to have this kind of life, to have this kind of success in these areas. And so, yeah, for me, a big part of growing and maturing, becoming hopefully wiser, is the realization of like, I'm not owed anything, you know? Because if you feel like you're owed something, then anything less than what you're owed, you feel a bit of resentment towards. But if you have the understanding that you're not owed anything, everything becomes a gift. You know what I mean? Like, even just being alive. Like, you're not owed being alive. So the fact that you get to be alive means that every little thing that you get to do is a bonus, you know?
So what creates that gratitude? What starts that sense of gratitude? It has to start small? Because you can't just say life, everything. What fills it? What fills this?
I mean, I think
you know?
For me, it was just doing a lot of work, you know?
Okay.
And by work, I mean like having a lot of conversations with people I'm close to, like my wife, working through why I feel bad about things, going on lots of walks, thinking about my thinking, you know, so like that metacognition stuff, reading other people, you know, because there's been so many people who have lived and written things, you know. And so you put all that together, I think it's just putting in the work about why am I the way I am? And what kind of person am I becoming? And do I want to become the kind of person I'm becoming? And if not, how do I change that? So yeah, I don't know that there's really like a specific practical piece of advice that works for everybody so much as, you know, you're just, again, it's kind of that rhythm of working it out. Yeah.
You don't understand it, you feel it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because a lot of this stuff too is like, the stuff I'm saying is stuff that I would have understood at 18, but like, I didn't get it. You know what I mean? There's a difference between like, well, yeah, you should just like be thankful for what you have, you know, but there's a difference between like knowing that and feeling that, I think.
So becoming process driven, like you have to do the thing and then suddenly you see that you've gained it, but you don't see this tangible reward right away. It's built up over time, and then you turn around and you're like, oh,
Sure.
this whole thing, that's my life now.
Yeah.
But because you've been focused on not the next thing, but the thing you're currently doing.
I think a big part of it too is trying to discover what the thing beneath the thing is, because a lot of times we don't even understand why we think a certain way, we do certain things, we have certain rhythms that maybe diminish our ability to flourish in life. So like for me, a big thing was I had all of these really strong dreams about like creating art that lasts a lifetime, that people are still consuming in 100 years, and creating something that's people are going to watch or read or listen to and be moved by long after I'm gone, and really became like an unhealthy thing. And when I sat with it long enough, realized that a big part of that was it was just like my fear of death and my fear of inadequacy kind of being made manifest through my desire to create something, because it was this idea that, well, if I can make something that lasts that long, then it would, creating something that lasts that long would make my life worth having been lived. You know what I mean? Like, would make it make sense that I got to be around, which is such a sad way of thinking about it. But I didn't know that's the way I thought about it
that's
until
legacy.
I sat with it. Yeah, this idea of like, what's the point of being alive if not going to be remembered? Which for me, basically what it was I was trying to not stare into the void. This is what it is, basically the idea of like, you're going to be forgotten. Everyone's going to be forgotten. Yeah. And that's scary to me. And I think, having grown up in an evangelical home, it was easy to repel that with this idea of just like, well, it's heaven, and all of the deeds you do here on earth are going to echo into eternity, which maybe, but, so that was able to repel that a little bit. But when I kind of came out of that religious context, there's this feeling of, oh wait, life might be meaningless, and there might be, you might just live and then die and nobody remembers you. But hey, maybe if I can create some sort of art that lives beyond me, then my life will have meaning. And realizing that that was kind of the way that I was approaching that, which is it's like a really unhealthy way of doing it. And then, so I actually had a period of time where I didn't make anything for like 6 months. I was just trying to figure out, how do I be creative in a healthy way again? Is really what it was. And so that's kind of how I worked through it.
So being focused on what it will be and not what it is that what you're saying? Like going beyond the current thing that you're doing? You're saying, what if this isn't the thing? What if this doesn't last throughout?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the understanding that it's not going to, and that what difference does it make? It sounds kind of bad. Like, really for me, it was like, what it did is it removed the pressure of feeling like I have to create something great. I have to be some sort of great person. I could just be me.
Well, great to who?
Exactly. Yeah. To all the people who are also going to be forgotten.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle with the idea of meaninglessness and nihilism. Very understandably so, because it's kind of terrifying to think about. But I think that it's also super freeing if you approach it the right way. You can say nothing matters and then cry about it, or you can say nothing matters and then laugh about it. And then life just becomes a game. Not in like a trivial way, but it's like, if there's truly no, we're getting really deep here, but if there's truly no meaning, then I can create that meaning myself. I can seek out that meaning.
Existentialism.
Yeah. But maybe there is meaning. Maybe everything I just said is wrong. So.
Well, so that's the thing. You have to break down everything, and then what you're left with is what matters, right? The thing that stays behind throughout all of the. If none of this matters, what remains, right? Sure. And that's the thing that actually does, because it's like, why is it still here then?
Yeah.
And we talk about that with all of nature. It's the thing that's left behind, but past us. You plant a tree, not for you to enjoy the shade, so that other people can.
I mean, I think that's another big reason why for me it's almost like a spiritual experience, kind of going out, walking, being in nature, is that I spent so much of my life so focused on like heaven and the next life and kind of this ethereal concept, I don't know, being in the clouds somewhere. But when you come out of that and you're like, you kind of, you I guess you could say, lose your religion, and you come to a place where you're like, this might be all there is. Man, you really just start to appreciate like this might be all there is, so I should enjoy this. Like, maybe there's a heaven, maybe there's some other way of existing beyond what we have now, but this is the only reality that I'm certain of, you know?
I think, therefore I am?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, I guess we're basically doing like freshman level philosophy, right?
No. It's breaking down that very simple thing and then being like, well, yeah, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. but then if you're clapping because you're so happy, there's something to those very simple platitudes, as you might think, right? But it's like, why did that last all these years? Right. Why is that thing still around? That phrase, that idea?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to a conversation with Alex O'Connor and somebody else recently, and he talked about how he feels like a lot of philosophy is on this bell curve of when you're just getting started and you're like a kid, you're asked these like what you think are really deep questions, like why is there something instead of nothing? How is there existence instead of non-existence? And then when you get into like more philosophy, it's like, well, that's a dumb question. Here's all these more in-depth questions. But then you go a little bit further, you do philosophy like 20 years, you actually come back around to the question like, why is there something instead of nothing? You know, which is like, there's a reason like those questions are the fundamental questions, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, so for me, there's definitely this feeling of like, this might be it. And so there might be like another version of reality. There might be, ultimate reality might be bigger than what I can see and feel and taste and touch now. But what I can see and feel and taste and touch now is the only reality I'm certain of. So I'm going to embrace it fully as if this is the only time I get to be alive. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's kind of, I don't know, lit a fire under my feet to really appreciate getting to be alive, because, you know, maybe this is it.
Mm-hmm. You had a fun idea. You've studied the hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
So what was some insight that you had provided?
Oh, right. Yeah. So we were talking about this yesterday. So like, if you're not familiar with the hierarchy of needs, it's this idea that humans try to fulfill their needs in different stages based on what we need the most to survive. Which it's not like a hard and fast scientific theory. It's more kind of a guideline. So you can be in different stages at different times, or two different stages at the same time. It's not, you know, necessarily like that. But yeah, the idea that humans generally at the bottom of the hierarchy is like, you know, shelter, safety, food, water, stuff like that. And then you go a little higher up, you have your sociological needs. So, you know, you need friendships, relationships, a network. And you go a little bit higher up, and it's like about achieving your dreams and stuff like that. At the very top of the hierarchy is something called self-actualization, which is the idea of like becoming your true self, you know, accomplishing all of your hopes and dreams, doing the thing. And that's how Abraham Maslow, the guy who created this, that's how he set it up originally. But then towards the very end of his life, he decided he wanted to add one more layer. And it's mostly taught without this layer. Some places you'll see in like certain textbooks will have this at the top, but he decided to add one more layer he called transcendence. And it's not like transcendence in necessarily like a spiritual sense of, once you have all your needs met, you transcend physical reality and now you're in a different place. But it's more like once you become somebody who is self-actualized and you have all of your needs met, you're then free to realize that life is not about you, and that you're able to kind of center your experience within the broader experience of all of humanity and all of like the cosmos, of all of existence or creation, or however you want to say it. And then you then live your life through that context. So then you become somebody whose words and actions and life is lived in such a way that you're constantly aware of how you're affecting other people or other places and other things. And your life becomes about helping others achieve their own self-actualization, their own transcendence. So,
There's less entitlement to that view.
Yeah, I think there's just a sense of thankfulness too. This is kind of going off a little bit, but I just was thinking about this. If you look at, which I didn't bring sources with me, so take this as a grain of salt, but if I remember correctly, you're right. Who needs sources?
It's an interview.
If you look at like most humans for most of human history, and just how much suffering there was, and how much people died up until like 150 years ago, something like half of all of the humans who have ever been born died before the age of 25. Almost half. A quarter of all humans who have ever been born died before the age of 5. You know, so if you think about, I'm 33, so 7 years past the average. So just the idea that I get to be alive, is something that a lot of people didn't have the luxury of, you know, and not only be alive, but like have a family, live in a safe country. You know, I mean, yes, I still have problems, I guess, but when you when you look at your life through the lens of like all of the humans who have ever lived, living like a king, man. And so I think it's easy, especially with the internet, to like compare your life to that of people who are way more successful than you, which is never a good idea.
Or just with more money.
Yeah,
somehow.
You compare yourselves to the billionaires. And yeah, I mean, there's something to say there about like inequity or whatever, but you know, so when you do that, it's obviously you feel like, man, my life sucks. But if you compare your life to the fact, you know, the majority of people who either died before the age of 25 or lost one of their children, you know, because think about 25% of all the, you know, babies died up until about 150 years ago. Think about how many kids you know, about a fourth of them having passed away. Like, that's the amount of human suffering that was consistent for most of human history. So just the fact that I get to be alive now and in the place I'm in, I was just so thankful, you know. I try not to take that for granted.
So how would you define success now?
How would I define success? On a practical level, I would say living the life you set out to live, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And so what life do you think?
Oh man, I set myself up for that question.
You did. What do you mean by that?
I mean, I think success is like being fully integrated. I think, you know, because I look at some people like somebody like Elon Musk. She's the most, which I have to say, like, we have Starlink internet, so I can't like talk too badly about him. He's changed my life. But he's the kind of guy who's like, he's like the richest man in the world, you know? So by that measure, he's incredibly successful, but he's also like completely relationally bankrupt. You know what I mean? Like, his kids don't talk to him. He's divorced. And again, like, I'm not trying to like speak bad about people who get divorced, or, you know, like, things happen. But and I don't think it's just Elon Musk. Like, a lot of these people who are super popular or successful, and yeah, like, they do crazy things. But in my opinion, like, if you reach the top of your whatever your industry is, you become, quote, successful, but it like costs you your relationships, it costs you like your marriage, it costs you your relationship with your kids, then I don't think you're actually successful. Which is kind of hard to say, but
yeah, it's not a love-driven.
Right.
It's not centered around something that other people would find fulfillment. Most humans in all history have found fulfillment with.
Sure.
Right. It's more material.
Well, I think it's like the Bible says. It's like, what good is it if you gain the whole world but you lose your soul? You know. I think that phrase holds up. Totally.
Like, you can. I think the best way to describe the thing that we're trying to get at is you can only draw a circle around it, and you're just trying to make that circle a little more narrow.
Yeah.
Because the center of it is the thing that's too overwhelming to even try to define as us humans being able to, with our limited senses, right? Because if you experienced everything all at once, this is actually something that I talked about for the first time on your podcast 2 years ago when I went to a place called Guerreri's, Switzerland. And basically I was like, there's been people here before me, there's people here after me, there were people that lived here that didn't appreciate this, there were people that are never going to come here or ever appreciate this, there are going to be people that come here and never care about what they did, right? They have something else going on. Yeah. And that hit me all at once. And yeah, opposite of a panic attack. I was like, it was a lot of senses all at once.
Transcendence.
All these new things.
They call that sonder too, is another word
Sonder.
for it.
I've never heard that.
Sonders. I think it's kind of like a made-up word, but it's a pretty popular word on the internet. Basically, it means it's the idea of realizing that there are all of these other stories that you will never get to fully live or understand because they're happening in other people's brains. But they're all happening at the same time as your story, as your consciousness.
It's fun. It's fun to be able to grasp onto that. Like, to not be like not visited again or anything. And funnily enough, that memory card did not have video on it. And so I don't have video of this experience.
Weird. Yep, it's only in your brain.
And so then I said, I think that's better. Because there's no way for me to actually define or the essence of this thing, because I try to put a lot of myself into it. I was like, this is beyond something that I think I could like comprehend what happened there. So I think it's better that it's just not digital.
As like a camera guy who makes things with like video, there's definitely moments where I just think, yeah, this is for me. This isn't. It's kind of like, you ever seen the end of Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
The ghost cat.
Yeah, very similar.
Let's just sit here with it.
Yeah.
So, humans being social creatures, it's good to interact with people. It's good to say hello every now and then.
Yeah, totally.
It's good to just be present with people who are also being present.
Yeah.
And everybody gets there in a different way.
I think a lot of people don't get there, though. That's the problem.
If living were easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
Right?
Totally. Well, I think a big part of it, is that it used to be that human interaction was just kind of built into our everyday lives by how we moved through the world. Whether it was ringing something up at the store, going to the bank, going to work. But now, it's, with so many things being digital, and with all of our entertainment being provided by technology, human interaction is no longer like a given. It's something you have to intentionally go seek out, and a lot of people just don't, because we never had to before. It's it's kind of always been a part of. I guess we've always had to go seek it out, but that was the only option we had. So going back to Wendell Berry, talk about him a lot. He has a story about how his he grew up in like the 50s, but like his parents and grandparents. This is like in rural Kentucky. The way that they would entertain themselves, especially like on winter nights, is after supper, they'd grab their lanterns and they'd walk across the snowy fields to the neighbor's house and make popcorn and tell each other stories. And like that was their entertainment for the night, was telling each other stories. And a lot of times like the same stories over and over again, staying warm. And but the thing is that now we outsource our storytelling to Disney, to Netflix, and so now that's just one example of how we used to use human connection to like entertain ourselves and to have that connection. But now we do it digitally with a one-way relationship that's just us staring at a screen. That's kind of a good anecdote to explain, I think, a lot of the disconnection that people feel in the modern age is that, we've outsourced a lot of our like entertainment and connection to technology, which is way more efficient, but it's lacking the potency that you get with an in-person conversation. So.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's an excellent way to think of it. Yes, outsourcing your connection.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think a lot of people in the modern world feel lonely, but they also don't want to do anything about it, which is kind of frustrating. It's like, you're lonely, well, then go sign up for a class, go join the PTO, go join your Chamber of Commerce, or be a Boy Scout leader. Like you're lonely, but you're also not willing to sacrifice anything or to make a time commitment to have community. And I get a lot of that too, is that people are working a lot. Some people have 2 jobs. You're too tired to. So like there are some practical reasons about it, but I do feel like in a lot of sense people are like, they just get home, they do nothing but scroll on the internet, and they're like, why do I feel so lonely? Like, well, you got to put an effort in, like, yeah.
Part of desiring less too, right? Like,
yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's just so much available to us. Like the entirety of all of the movies and shows and music and podcasts that have been created, you can get at any time. And so it's almost like we have too much, but none of it's like the same.
It's too much, people. But none of it's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you had like not a prediction, but just maybe like from the collective view of things, this is what you kind of speak to a lot in different ways. But
sure.
There's something that you can sort of identify, kind of a summary of what we've said.
Sure.
Like the cycles, the desiring less, the outsourcing our communication and entertainment. We don't outsourcing our stories. I think that's a very important big one. Why? Yeah, let's stick with that one. Like, why is story so important to you?
Sure.
Throughout all of us, like it's important to know your story, but it's important to know everybody's like history and story,
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Why?
I mean, story is, it's kind of what separates man from beast, if you think about it, because it's our ability to use words to communicate and ideas, messages, and things like that. But story is how we've shared who we are since, before we could write words. We were sharing stories, an oral tradition. And you look at indigenous populations anywhere in the world, like that's how their history started and continues, is through stories that are told. And so stories tell us who we are. They tell us what we believe to be true about the world, and to that sense, I think it's incredibly important. Stories shape the what we think about the world. Which is why I think you can look at trends in like Hollywood and then kind of trace what that looks like. Like America is very individualistic, and that shows up in our media. We have these movies where like the hero saves the day, and maybe he's got some sidekicks or something, but like he's the hero, because that's how we manifest our desire for this like strong individualism. Even though historically speaking, it's been like collective efforts that have been the most successful, but that's not the stories we like to tell.
Takes a village.
Yeah, it really does.
That's good. Anything you want to end on? This is a lot to. We threw a lot out there.
We went a lot of different directions. It was fun.
But I think this is a pretty good, because I want to start walking out in the woods soon.
Okay.
So
I would just say to end it, like, don't overthink it, man. Just go smell some flowers. If you're like, how do I get out there and start appreciating life? I think it can get really complicated, but it doesn't have to. I say that as somebody who's like living at a resort, so maybe I'm not the best. I haven't endured a huge amount of suffering while having this worldview yet, so it's possible that it's all going to collapse, but I don't think so.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
Suffering is relative.
Sure. I don't have anything else.
That's very good.
I feel like I've been rambling.
No, this is great. This is great stuff.
Well, how do we sign off?
Well, you can close it out and say that closing statement, that final thing that you want to say right now.
If you ever thought about going there and doing that, then go there and do that. What are you waiting for? Thanks.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you around. That's good. That's fun.